So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today we're actually going to do a little review with Surah Maryam from ayah 77, and we're then going to continue where we had left off in the tafsir for that surah from last time. So we will continue that now. So let's start with that. أفرأيت الذي كفر بآياتنا وقال لأوتين مالا وولدا. And of course, this is actually taking us into the different arguments that the non-Muslims or the kuffar were actually putting in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and it laid out a number of different responses. And part of the response, we talked about the philosophy that they regarded that, hey, if I already have the prosperity, if I already am getting a better advantage, if I already have the economical, the political, the social advantage, then therefore I am more likely to continue getting those advantages. Even if I were to die, more likely I will be getting those advantages. So that was what they had regarded as their of course their theory, and they laid it out as an argument that, hey, if I have an advantage now, then most likely I will be getting that advantage. So it's a hypothetical thing, but they considered that, hey, this is an evidence that we will still be better in position, more likely to get the advantage even later on. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laid out a number of different responses. Number one, attala al-ghaib. And of course, this is looking at, if you are to assume that what is going to happen in the future is really a trace or traces back to the advantage that they're actually living in right now. So the ayah says attala al-ghaib. So the first one is, well, did you actually get to see the future? In other words, don't bet on that advantage is going to continue in the future. And that's why it also laid out another response to it. وَنَمُدُّ لَهُ مِنَ الْعَذَابِ مَدًّا. So in other words, don't expect that the advantage that you're living in is necessarily an advantage. It could actually be another type of torture or another type of a disadvantage when you had expected that it was actually an advantage. And that this so-called, or what they called, an advantage is in reality a disadvantage, where it's actually a punishment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had expanded for them, and they're not realizing that it's a form of torture that they're actually living in. وَنَرِثُهُ مَا يَقُولُ. So نَرِثُهُ مَا يَقُولُ, in where they will be held accountable not only for what they had done in their life, but even what delusion and the delusion that they had caused after their life, and what they had deluded others that surround them with. And of course, the third part, which is وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً. They had actually regarded that there is this hierarchy that they were depending on. I want you to look at this point, because they were forced depending on the argument that the advantage that we're living in is number one, proving that we're going to be getting the advantage to continue, and therefore our life is definitely better. And the second argument that they had actually based their philosophy on was the idea of an authority. So that the authority that they depended on, وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً, that they had actually taken other gods. And I want you to look at this other gods, by the way, because taking a deity, and this is really important, please pay attention to this one. Taking a deity is not necessarily only in a deity in worship. I want you to pay attention to this one, because when the hadith, when it actually spoke about when the Prophet ﷺ had met with Adi ibn Hatim al-Ta'i. I want you to look at this one. When Adi ibn Hatim al-Ta'i met the Prophet ﷺ, Adi ibn Hatim was of course here making a dialogue with the Prophet ﷺ. He was a Christian, and Adi ibn Hatim laid out an argument that they don't worship their priests. So the Prophet ﷺ said, do the priests not regard certain matters as halal and certain matters as haram? In other words, they are put in a position to consider certain matters as ethical and not ethical, or right or wrong. So if they are in that position, they are considered as a form of putting them in place of a god. In other words, it is deifying that priest, even if you did not necessarily regard him as a god. And which is the same thing here. Even during our times, many would say, well, right now, nobody is going to claim that they would worship such god or something, unless we're really talking about different deities, or in other words, in different religions, they would have, whether it's Buddha or different deities, even though Buddhism is more of an atheist religion. All right. Somebody might say, well, they're an atheist and they don't regard a god, so therefore this doesn't apply to them. So in Islam, it does actually apply to them, because even the idea of, for example, liberalism, that regards that people are the place of the place in that regards right or wrong, or what is ethical, what is not ethical. Liberalism is in itself, that idea, that concept is in itself a form of deifying. In other words, it's making a deity. It's making liberalism be that deity that is infallible and therefore sacred, and that is another form of making and creating a religion. So in Islam, even atheism is regarded a religion, because it has its own liberal, that liberal philosophy of what we apply in life and right or wrong. And it has its own idea of how the world is created, the genesis of the world, whether you want to call it evolution or you want to call it the Big Bang or whatever. It is all these different theories that in the end, they make up how you see the beginning of the world, the end of the world, and what defines ethical and not ethical, and what defines morality, etc. So that's why this ayah, وَاتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ آلِهَةً. So they had taken, of course, the other evidence that they had based their lifestyle on is really what they regarded as holy, as sacred, and let's call it that idea of regarding it as sacred, and that idea of giving it some holiness was really aliha, so different gods or different positions of authority. لِيَكُونُوا لَهُمْ عِزَّةً. I want you to focus on this word. So the reason why they took a certain form of authority, or different authorities, whether it's an actual god or whether it is a form or something that is in a form of a god that they regarded as sacred or gave it sanctity, is because they wanted لِيَكُونُوا لَهُمْ عِزَّةً. They supported that idea so much that they actually saw some level of honor, that they had been inspired by it. And this is really important, because when we actually look that inspiration part, and how even those that would take any idea, any religion or any philosophy, and regard it as a form, and give it some sanctity and in a position of authority, they will always put it in a form of izzah. They will always give it that sanctity, that honor, and they will speak. They will have that language that carries within it lots of confidence, lots of authority, and lots of support, and they will get that inspiration. And this is important to say, because at many times people would think that it's a lot easier back then than today, and didn't realize, look at that ayah. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ يُوحِي بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ غُرُورًا وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ مَا فَعَلُوا. Look at this ayah. So this ayah in Surah Al-An'am, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا. For every single prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made a certain enemy, for those prophets. It's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them, but these people were basically in that position opposing the prophets. And who were they from? From the humans and from the jinn. What about them? يوحي بعضهم إلى بعض زخرف القول غرورا. I want you to look at that زخرف القول. What were they doing? يوحي بعضهم. They were giving the narrative. They were supporting each other with the argument زخرف القول. When you look at the word زخرف القول, you're actually looking at a narrative that was put forward in where it was designed in a way to give some form of glory, some form of like it appears zukhraf, it appears so muzakhraf. When you say something muzakhraf, it appears so beautified. And this is the age that we're actually living in. So, whether in the past or today, it's really the same idea. And we're using zukhruf al-qawl, using a form of narrative, making falsehood by using narrative and by using beautification to beautify falsehood, to make it appear as if it contained all the beauty, as if it contained all the inspiration, as if it contained all the zakhrafa, all the design that made it appear as if it made it appear very appealing to people. So it's the same exact story in where they actually had used zukhruf al-qawl, and that beautification of words, eloquence may sometimes also be that zukhruf al-qawl, in where the Prophet ﷺ actually said, "Inna min al-bayani la sihra." Certain bayans, certain eloquence can have its magic, in deluding the people. Even eloquence can be a form of magic, can be a form of delusion, in which is, the form of delusion when we're talking about postmodernism. There's always that narrative that is presented to the masses to make it seem like it weighs a strong logic or a strong argument, or weighs some what is the word that I could use, that it weighs a lot of different evidence to support it, when in reality كلا سيكفرون بعبادتهم ويكونون عليهم ضدا. What is that? كلا, verily. Kalla can mean verily and can also mean verily not. So it's denying and rejecting the previously mentioned part of it, in where it's saying, no, they won't have that honor. They will not get that authority through those deities, whether that deity was an actual deity or whether that deity was a philosophy. At the end, سَيَكْفُرُونَ بِعِبَادَتِهِمْ. So here's the question. سَيَكْفُرُونَ بِعِبَادَتِهِمْ. Who's going to deny who? Is the idea, or the deities themselves going to deny that they had worshipped them? So there are differences of opinions between scholars on this sentence, in where the first opinion says that that is the masses, will deny that they had actually worshipped these deities. The other opinion said that no, the actual deities will be given life and will be there to have a conversation with them, and that these deities will say, no, they didn't worship us, we had nothing to do with them, they were creating their own idea, they were creating their own shirk, they were creating their own polytheism, and we have nothing to do with this. So in the end, regardless of whether the ones to deny worshiping these deities were the masses, or whether it's the deities themselves that denied that these masses were worshiping them, in the end, يَكُونُونَ عَلَيْهِمْ ضِدًّا. From one point of seeking some honor through these deities, and like we said, it can be a deity to be an actual thing or philosophy, in the end, it will be standing in opposition to their to what they had worshipped, and or to the idea that they had actually once wanted to gain support from. So in the end, it becomes this opposing idea that they will be finding right in front of them, proving them wrong. ألم ترى أن أرسلنا الشياطين على الكافرين تؤزهم أزا. Do you not see how the Lord Almighty sends the shayateen? I want you to look at this one. So is it that Allah actually sends the shayateen? So is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala motivates the shayateen to actually go a certain place? Now we did talk about arsalna, and we said it's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends them. So it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not send a shayateen to do the evil thing, but shayateen were actually given that will to do what they are doing. They were given the will, they were given the test as well to do such a thing, which is to do number one, il-az. So that's number one, il-az, and of course, il-ghiwaya, to do il-ghiwaya. Il-ghiwaya is different than il-az because ta'uzzuhum azza. So what is that telling? So shayateen were ta'uzzuhum. In Arabic, whenever you see a verb that has a shadda, it's going to have a number of different meanings. So the first meaning, ta'uzzuhum, can actually mean that it has a power. It has a power, a repetitive power, a form of repetition to do something fiercely. And the other shadda, or sometimes the shadda can also mean a gradual process. And number three, it can also mean to be repetitive movement. So what does it actually mean here? Ta'uzzuhum azza would mean that it would actually do a form of fitna, where there is this movement that will let the person that comes across, or this fitna that affects them, it will come and give them a form of hayajan, a form of anger, a form of excitement, a form of ecstasy, if it is actually a pleasure that the shayateen are pushing them into. So it depends on the fitna. Want to look at this one, because it depends on the fitna. It depends on the fitna. That's how the shayateen will actually relate with the person. So if it is a matter of pleasure, it will actually give them a form of ecstasy, and which is when we're talking about al-ghiwaya. فبعزتك لأغوينهم أجمعين. It will actually give that ghiwaya. Al-ghiwaya is a form of beautification that the shayateen will practice. But then if it is a matter that requires, let's say, thought, it requires thinking about a matter, it will actually be a different form of riwaya, where it will be called a fitna. A fitna is that it makes you see what is wrong as right. In other words, it becomes more of a mental delusion that it will actually put you in, and which is why إن الذين اتقوا إذا مسهم طائف من الشيطان, which takes us into another form where shayateen are not always appearing in a form of az. Il-az more come for people that are weaker. So who's weaker? So here's the thing. If you look at that ayah where it says الذين اتقوا إذا مسهم طائف من الشيطان, الطائف is more of a shadow. So the shadow of shaitan comes to the strong people, and which is why it says إن الذين اتقوا, those that fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those that have religious integrity. The shayateen don't dare to actually come to them in a form of az, in a form of power, in a form of shaking that person, but they will actually come as a form of shadow. They don't come in their full appearance. appearance. And when we say full appearance, we're not necessarily talking about they would manifest themselves in doing a conversation with the people that they are going after. What do we mean by a conversation here? Remember, you can do a conversation with the people that surround you, and it can be a conversation in where we've got different senses. Even with animals, there are different conversations that animals can do through smell, different conversations that animal can do by listening to sound, vibrations. We know bats, they would know their prey just by listening to the vibrations, even though they're actually blind, but they would have these vibrations and they would communicate with their prey. Is the prey not necessarily happy to have a bat coming to them, but this is a form of communication. And that's the same thing. How do we communicate with the shayateen? Is waswasa is a form of communication that is not the actual communication that you do with another human being in where you're talking to them. So we know that we communicate with our surroundings in different ways. So here, ta'uzuhum azza, this form of communication is a form of a strong communication that brings that shaking, where it makes them so fond, so happy, so proud. And this actually is why it actually says لِيَكُونُ لَهُمْ عِزَّةً. It gives them a form of pride, it gives them a form of support, and they would actually feel so strong. They would feel so strong about the argument and about what they're doing. It's because the shayateen actually came to them, bringing them that bringing in them that shake, giving them that form of power to feel that power. فَلَا تَعْجَلْ عَلَيْهِمْ. In the end, is that lots of times the person in front of a person that has confidence, and this is always a method that is used by, for example, atheists. The method that the atheist especially would use is the condescending form. Do they necessarily have an argument and answer to the questions that they would lay out for you? The answer is they don't have an answer, and they would assume that by making you provoked to answer certain questions that probably nobody would be able to answer, or provoke you by condescending the religion, condescending Islam, or probably humiliate you in a way, etc. That's their argument. That's a form of bringing in an argument by condescending you, by making you feel humiliated, by using satire as a form of argument, when in reality they don't even really have an answer to that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, فَلَا تَعْجَلْ عَلَيْهِمْ. Don't rush in seeing one, what the consequence of their argument, or the consequence of what they had laid out, or the consequence of what lifestyle they're living. فَلَا تَعْجَلْ عَلَيْهِمْ. Just give them the time. In other words, don't rush, and don't feel provoked. And this is really important. Don't get easily provoked by all the different things that they're laying out on you. And this is really important in doing da'wah. In doing da'wah, we see a lot of people that when they're making da'wah, out of themselves. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, let the people that don't believe, or those that don't find confidence in the faith, or those that don't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you, get that feeling that you are in a place of front of you, then of course somebody that's like are right now shaken by that will actually affect even the stance for the religion. And you have to not let go of your honor and let others dishonor you because of your desire to give da'wah to others. Honor yourself and honor the religion, and don't feel that there is any justification to dishonor yourself in order to give da'wah. And remember, even when you want to give da'wah, in the end is that فَذَكِّرْ إِن نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى. Give the reminder when the reminder you're expecting that reminder is going to bring good. But don't dishonor yourself and make a fool out of yourself to make da'wah. Make sure you maintain your izzah. فَلَا تَعْجَلْ عَلَيْهِمْ is actually another word to tell you وَلَا يَسْتَخِفَّنَّكَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُوقِنُونَ. Don't rush. Don't rush here. إنما نعد لهم عدا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إنما, verily, إنما is a form of giving affirmation. It's affirming نعد لهم, that the Lord Almighty is counting, is holding them accountable. And when you look at in Arabic, نعد لهم عدا, this is actually called مفعول مطلق, in where it is assuring that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is counting their deeds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is holding them accountable. So don't rush in getting the consequence, or in getting to their hidayah. Don't rush. Just give them the chance, give them the time, and let them be held accountable for their actions. يوم نحشر المتقين إلى الرحمن وفدا. On the other hand, يوم نحشر المتقين. On that day, and of course, نعد لهم عدا, when it said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is counting. When you look at the word adda, so in other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is counting their deeds. When you see the word adda, it's kind of like saying one by one, every single deed. It's affirming that we literally mean counting their deeds, counting their words, holding them accountable for every single deed. That's in Lugha Arabiya called مفعول مطلق. يوم نحشر المتقين. See, you guys, good thing you're not in front of me, because this could actually mean COVID. يوم نحشر المتقين إلى الرحمن وفدا. يوم نحشر, on that day, نعد لهم عدا, for what are they counting? What are they counting them for? يوم, for the day that the Lord Almighty نحشر. نحشر means together. So the day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will gather المتقين. المتقين means those that have religious integrity. المتقين does not mean fear, by the way. I don't understand why they would always translate it as taqi, to hold a barrier, to put a barrier, but really muttaqin are more of people of religious integrity, where taqwa, you have such strong love for the Lord Almighty that you fear to transgress any limit and lose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's content over you. And that's religious integrity. So what happens? The Lord Almighty will gather al-muttaqin, so which is the people that have religious integrity, to the Lord. So what happens? Ya Allah, this is beautiful. Ila ar-Rahmani wafda. Ila ar-Rahman actually means, it's like when there's in Palestine, and I'm sure it's in other countries, where al-arus is tuzaf. Al-arus is actually brought forward. Even in the West, the arus, the bride, is brought in a form of, in a form of in such a high form of respect, where she would come in, the arus, she would come in to her, her, I guess, place that she's going to be sitting in, or a place of honor. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring al-muttaqin ila ar-Rahman. What force will be put in there? And notice here, nahshurul muttaqin. But is al-hashr something that's supposed to be fun or not? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that nahshur al-muttaqin, there's al-hashr. Al-hashr is not supposed to be giving you a good connotation, because al-hashr is to actually cage somebody. But here, al-hashr is actually telling you that al-muttaqin are not being caged per se, but they're more ila ar-Rahman, that they're actually sent over to the Lord Almighty. But it didn't say Lord Almighty, it said ar-Rahman, ila ar-Rahman, to the most merciful one. Wafda, in where they won't be pushed, but they will actually be riding on some form of transportation. It will be a form of transportation, and this form of transportation, it's like they're, like the royal form of, the royal form, and where they'll be riding on, I guess, some kind of a coach. I guess in Britain they call it that coach thing, and this coach thing driving them, and it's taking them to, their crown area, or etc. And that's the same thing in where the muttaqin are actually riding on us on this form of transportation, and they're actually taken to the most merciful one. On the other hand, وَنَسُوقُ الْمُجْرِمِينَ, that's a different thing than nahshuru. I want you to use that comparison, okay? So here it says nahshuru, in where they'll be gathered, they'll be put on some kind of a transportation thing, and they'll be taken to the most merciful one. They'll be taken. Somebody's going to take them. But here, nasuqu al-mujrimin. Nasuqu means they'll be pushed. Why are they being pushed? Nasuqu, they'll be pushed, they'll be dragged. Who's going to be getting dragged? Al-mujrimin. Those that had transgressed the limits, where the ayah says al-mujrimin, the criminals, ila jahannama wirda, to hellfire. Ila jahannama wirda. Wirda actually means they would be so thirsty. Why are they thirsty? Well, remember, the sun is going to be coming down to the heads. It's not the sun that we right now know, the sun that in our solar system, but it's like that sun, in where it's going to get near all the people that are gathered on Judgment Day. It's going to go near their heads, and they're going to be sweating based on their sins. All right. And then that heat is going to be so strong that it's going to affect it's going to affect not only them getting the sweat, but it's even going to affect their body. They're going to start getting thirsty. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for al-muttaqeen, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will draw al-Kawthar. Al-Kawthar would be a river. The original spring for that river is in Jannah. The spring of Al-Kawthar coming from Jannah, now there's a river in where it streams in the place of Al-Hashr, in the place of where everyone is gathered. All right. Now, the Prophet ﷺ would be the one, because that was his dua, would be the one to intercede for the people. There won't be any cups, so people during that intercession will actually be extremely thirsty. Then the mu'mineen, the muttaqeen, will be then brought riding. They'll be drinking from that water, al-Kawthar. They'll be drinking, and they'll never find thirst ever again. They'll never find thirst ever again after drinking from al-Kawthar. All right. So al-mujrimeen, on the other hand, they're not given that opportunity to drink from that Kawthar, so they will be rejected, and they will not be given the chance to drink. So they will continue to feel that thirst. And then ila jahannama wirda. The word wirda actually means the animal that is extremely thirsty, and specifically the camels when they are extremely thirsty. So they would be like camels, like thirsty camels, in where they are then driven to hellfire. Nas'alullah al-afwa al-afiyah. Oh my God, this is so scary. Nas'alullah al-afwa al-afiyah. That they will be driven to hellfire thirsty. لا يملكون الشفاعة. لا يملكون الشفاعة. They will not own or have the right for the advantage of intercession. See, now you're saying intercession. What intercession are we talking about? Remember the Kawthar that we just talked about earlier? The whole Quran is coherent. So if you don't actually have the Sunnah to explain to you, you're going to get lost on what it really is it talking about. So the reason why it talked about a shafa'a is because it already told us, in the Prophet ﷺ already explained to us why they would be thirsty, because they did not have the right to get the intercession and drink from the water of al-Kawthar, that is the stream coming from Jannah. إِلَّا مَنِ اتَّخَذَ عِنْدَ الرَّحْمَنِ عَهْدًا. The only ones that will have the right for that intercession are really the ones that had عِنْدَ الرَّحْمَنِ عَهْدًا, the ones that lived up to the principle that the Lord Almighty had held them accountable for. What principle? What are we talking about? Ahd means a promise. What promise? What is this talking about? So here's what it's talking about. Remember when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inna aradna al-amana, that al-amana, that the trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had asked the skies, the earth, and the mountains if they would take that trust, and they all said they don't want to, and accepted to take that test. It was really ظلوما جهولا. Only man, human beings that take that, they were ظلوما جهولا. What does that have to do with anything? What that has to do with the whole story is that this is talking about the free will. The free will in order to get tested. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given you the free will in order to accept getting and to get the as an advantage. That free will was not necessarily an advantage, but that free will was actually the center for accountability. Accountability, and the test is in what? Whenever you go and take a test, there's always, okay, from what unit to what unit are you going to be asking me about? What is the test on? What am I going to be tested about? Well, that's where al-ahda, that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually answers it and actually mentions that it's actually in Sharia. It's actually in going to apply the principle of, or you going to listen to the to the push, to the motivation of shayateen that are going to motivate you with the pleasures that your body is going to find. وَقَالُوا اتَّخَذَ الرَّحْمَنُ وَلَدًا. So what happened here? Where did this ahd actually begin? And when did it begin? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually explains it when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you got a number of different things. Remember, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Tells the malaika, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to create a khalifa, another creation, and they started wondering, well, are you going to create something? We mentioned that story before. So here's what happened. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created within us, yes, al-ahd, the free will, but there's another thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created within us. It's not just the free will, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created within us a fitrah. What is the fitrah regarding? The fitrah is regarding كل مولود يولد على الفطرة. Every single newborn, every single creature is actually born with an instinct. What is that instinct? That instinct is that there is something behind this world. Is it necessarily God? Not necessarily God, but there is that fitrah to question, why am I created? Who created me? What is afterlife? Why is this whole thing surrounding me anyways? And that's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Anbiya. It's part of Al-Ahd. The Anbiya were sent to answer that fitra call in us, and the Anbiya were sent to also answer what is the test relating. So there's the Ahd. That's why the ayah continues telling you, well, they would say that the Lord Almighty Ar-Rahman, which the most merciful, that he had taken a son. In other words, associating partners with the Lord Almighty. So what was that claim regarding? That claim was regarding, remember, Al-Ahd constitutes of two things. Al-Ahd constitutes, number one, the fitrah, in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually sent the prophets to answer. Number two, it actually relates to your behavior element of where you're held and what you're held accountable for, which is your behavior and the principle. So what does that mean? This means it's actually الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات. You're held accountable for your faith and you're held accountable for your amal. So ahda is actually putting it in one word to tell you it's a promise. It's a trust that you were given. But most will leave the part about in where they will say that the Lord Almighty had a son, and therefore they will use that as a form to do another form of worship, to do another form of deifying, and then instead of worshiping the Lord Almighty, associating that associate to the Lord Almighty. لَقَدْ جِئْتُمْ, verily, you had come with the matter that is extreme, that is extremely, the word idda actually means it is refuting. It is something that is just that something that is extremely horrible to say. That idea, because the second that you say the Lord Almighty had a walad, had a son, that would actually mean that it's a creature. How is it that the Lord Almighty can have a son? Or what would you regard that son? Is that son a creator, or is he a creature? The question of doing anything, is he capable of creating a son? Sorry, everyone. It actually, the internet got me disconnected. So we're okay. Here we go. We're back. So in Islam, that's actually self-refuting, because the Lord Almighty is not a creature, but a creator. So to actually regard the Lord Almighty as a creature, that's where in Islam it actually considered as جئتم شيئا إدا تكاد السماوات يتفطرن. The heavens are about to يتفطرن. They're about to, yeah, the word يتفطرن actually means to rip open. The heavens, the skies are about to get to rip open. Why would they rip open? Because the heavens, the skies, the different things, the different things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in the universe would all submit to the Lord Almighty, in where they too, by following the pattern that the Lord Almighty had created that they would follow, in that it's actually the form of submission to the Lord Almighty. Even the earth is about to blast open. وَتَخِرُّ الْجِبَالِ, even though الجبال are standing high, but the mountains are nearly تَخِر, they're nearly going to collapse in such an in they had claimed that the Lord merciful had begotten a son. وَمَا يَنبَغِي لِلرَّحْمَنِ أَن يَتَّخِذَ وَلَدًا. The Lord Almighty, it is impossible, it is not befit for the Lord Almighty, the most merciful, that he would beget son. In kullu man fi samawati wal ard illa in when you look at the word man samawat, man, it is really important to mention, because man relates something that is in the heavens, in the space, in space, or even creatures in the universe, out there in Mars, Allahu Alam. But the word man in the Quran is telling us that they're actually thinkable creatures in the samawat, in the different universes. It's not one universe, but it's actually samawat in more than one universe. There are different thinkable creatures, and they will all be coming to the Lord Almighty in one by one individual servants. لَقَدْ أَحْصَاهُمْ. This is so scary. لَقَدْ أَحْصَاهُمْ. The Lord Almighty, when you look at أَحْصَاهُمْ, that actually means that the Lord Almighty counted them. Each and every single one of them will actually be counted. There's no running away. Each and every single one of them will be watched, will be counted, will not be dismissed. That is, وَعَدَّهُمْ عَدَّ. They're counted one by one, creature by creature. None will get dismissed. وَكُلُّهُمْ, and all of them, آتيه يوم القيامة فردا. And each and every single one will come on Judgment Day individually. This actually reminds me of the hadith of Adi ibn Hatim al-Ta'i. Adi ibn Hatim al-Ta'i was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, and Adi was, listening to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, "Oh Adi, have you seen Al-Hira?" Now, Al-Adi comes from that area. He's Ta'i. That area was actually known to being a very dangerous area. That area was known to having the gangs and pirates, the pirates that were controlling those areas. It was a desert area, but you will get these people that will invade those areas. Yes, pirates aren't ships and in the sea, but there will be these gangsters that will actually, and there were these gangsters that were pretty much controlling that area. And Adi ibn Hatim says, he said, I haven't seen it, but I was told about it. He said, the Prophet ﷺ says, by Allah, if you live long enough, you will see that the woman, an older woman, would be able to come all the way from Al-Hira, all the way from that area near Iraq, going all the way to Mecca, doing her Hajj and coming back, not afraid of anything. Adi is listening, and he said, and I said to myself, وَأَيْنَ شُطَّارُ طَيْءٍ, and where the gangsters of the tribe of Tai, the gangsters that we already know are already controlling that area. And he said, and I lived long enough where the Muslims were in control of those areas. And then women, even elderly women, were feeling that safety to actually go all the way from those areas, do her Hajj and come back, and no danger was surrounding her. And then the Prophet ﷺ tells him, Adi, if you live long enough to see that there's going to come a time where the young girls would actually be the masters of their own mothers. Adi wondered, how's that even possible? And it wasn't until later the young daughters of the bondswomen were becoming the masters of their own mothers. And some scholars said, to the young girls becoming the masters of their own mothers, well, the girls, and of course this is not just talking about the girls, but how the children will start becoming the authority over their parents. And the Prophet ﷺ, in the last part of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, just like I told you that 1, 2, 3 things will happen. Adi, you will stand in front of the Lord Almighty, and there would be no interpreter between you and the Lord Almighty. Adi is listening. Adi was a Christian. Adi later became Muslim. Him and his sister Savannah had later become Muslim. Savannah, yep. Savannah was his sister. Savannah was his sister, and later became Muslim, and actually became a very good Muslim. But Adi ibn Hatim said, after hearing the Prophet ﷺ and telling me about those prophecies, Adi says, and by Allah, I will see each and every single one of these. And that's where, when we look at these prophecies, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَكُلُّهُمْ, and all of them will come on Judgment Day as individuals, one by one. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, verily, those that believed and acted righteously, سَيَجْعَلُ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا, the Lord Almighty will actually make in the hearts of those that believe in Allah Almighty and those that do righteousness, Allah Almighty will let one. Some scholars said, سَيَجْعَلْ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا, where they will love each other. And this is very important, because hate does actually bring in a lot of distrust, a lot of a lot of, what is the word? Anxiety. So Allah Almighty is actually here telling us, سَيَجْعَلْ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا. Allah Almighty will make amongst those that believed and did right to us on Judgment Day, the Lord Almighty will actually remove any animosity in between their hearts or even amongst them, and will actually make them love one another. And which is very similar to the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, okay, that's it. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will uplift or totally eliminate any type of animosity in the heart, even in those that enter Jannah. And this is really important. Is it possible that I can hate somebody in the dunya, at least hate, or have, a person that is, she's a good Muslimah, but I just don't like her? Is it possible that that can happen? Yes. And that's why you want to be humble, not because you dislike somebody. It doesn't mean that they're going to hellfire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you here that even on Judgment Day, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to uproot any type of hate that might be in our hearts. So you might not like, for example, Amina or Wafa or Ayah or whatever her name is, all right? And you just hate her attitude. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you right there, سَيَجْعَلْ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا. He'll make you love one another on Judgment Day. He'll make you love one another, and Allah Almighty is capable of making the sentiments that we might have towards ourselves, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is capable of making it into wudda, in form of love, in a form of affection, in where even in Jannah you won't, in Jannah you will not have any anxiety, because you will have all of them. Every single one of them will actually give you that love, that support, and each and every single one of you will guarantee that they really, really love you. Why? Because Allah Almighty said, سَيَجْعَلْ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا. The other interpretation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make those that believe and those that do good, the Lord Almighty will let everything love them. That's the second interpretation. In other words, you be good and the Lord Almighty will make the people love you, will make the people even, and some scholars said even farther than just people, but that even al-hajar, even the rocks, even the different things that surround you will also love you. فَإِنَّمَا, this is the other interpretation based on سَيَجْعَلْ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا. Everything will love them. فَإِنَّمَا يَسَّرْنَاهُ بِلِسَانِكَ. That the Lord Almighty, why did it actually jump in there? فَإِنَّمَا يَسَّرْنَاهُ بِلِسَانِكَ. فَإِنَّمَا, because we had made it easy for you to read the message that the Lord Almighty will bring love, will bring happiness to the لِتُبَشِّرَ بِهِ. The whole thing is in order. Now remember, why was telling us how those Anbiya, they had left the people that they had loved, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had gave them good company, had gave Prophet Ibrahim, Yaqub and Ishaq, gave Prophet Ismail, his family, gave Maryam, Prophet Isa, gave Yahya, gave Prophet Zakaria, Yahya, and it said, وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ مِنْ رَحْمَتِنَا وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ مِنْ رَحْمَتِنَا. That was the pattern. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, continue the pattern that we started the surah out with. The pattern is the Lord Almighty promises that those that believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do righteous, that the Lord Almighty will give them partners, loving partners. This is the theme that the ayat we're trying to get to. فَإِنَّمَا يَسَّرْنَاهُ بِلِسَانِكَ. In the end, we made it easy. We made it a theme, easy for you to deliver in order to bring glad tidings for المتقين, for those that have religious integrity, and at the same time to warn those that actually had united and were very ardent in going against the Lord Almighty. وَكَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا قَبْلَهُمْ. And just tell them, remind them, how many were destructed from the different nations that in the different centuries that had come before. The lowest sound. Do you sense any of their sounds? Can you hear what does that arguments that they were laying out? The sound of that argument that they once were saying with all their voices, were saying loudly, we're so confident that it will continue forever and ever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, do you even hear it? The argument is not there anymore, and neither are they. The argument, their words, the nations, all the things that they had promised that was going to be, that they had promised that it was going to be forever and ever, lasting throughout their existence, is now not a sound to be heard, and not even the slightest sound of their existence, or that they had ever lived to be heard or to be cited. هل تحس منهم من أحد? Do you sense any of them? Do you hear any of them? Not even the slightest sound. They had become history. What is that trying to tell us? That the word of haqq will always be the one that the Lord Almighty will preserve. And the words that they were always putting forward as an argument, they and those that will speak in their loudest words, that it will be the argument that will stay strong according to them. They and their argument will become history and nothing to be heard. This is the end of Surah Maryam, in where this is the theme of all the different stations that we had covered in Surah Maryam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ سَيَجْعَلْ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that support one another on haqq, and make us from those that during our times, yes, just like the previous times when we would feel isolated, we would feel that support. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that the Lord will give us the support and friends, for the friends that are once finding family and the different I'm back, everyone. Sorry, but my laptop disconnected the Zoom again. So here I am. I'm back, alhamdulillah. So if everyone, if they can tell me, can you hear me now? I'm sorry, but my laptop keeps on disconnecting that Zoom. So if there are any questions, yeah, alhamdulillah, there I'm back. If there are any questions or anybody would like to comment on anything, go ahead. Next week, inshallah, we'll be doing Surah Al-Baqarah. Inshallah, it's going to be a long surah to do, but that's what I was asked to do, inshallah. If there are any questions, or if there's anybody that would like to say anything or correct me, might have missed something, please unmute yourself and go ahead. Anybody would like to say anything? I guess nobody wants to say anything. Well, I guess we'll leave it from there. وإياكم, and Allah yarda ankum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that will be gathered on Judgment Day, and make us from those that will have the wood and the love in between us, and make us from those that will get to Jannah and nal shafa'a, get the intercession. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hold us and keep us steadfast on haqq. And barakallahu fikum, everyone, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.